Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special session on office hours with Red Hat. Now, I know yesterday we had a great talk on structuring healthcare for LLMs, and I believe there was close to 200 attendees there. So very, very well attended, and I know there was lots of questions. So now is your chance to ask more questions about that session, as well as other sessions we've hosted with Red Hat. And before I introduce the speakers for today, I just have a few quick announcements. And the first big one is actually ODSC East is returning to Boston on May 13th to 15th. We're very excited about this because it's actually our 10th in-person anniversary. ODSC actually started in 2015. So for those of you who can count, which I'm pretty sure is many of you, you will notice that's 11 years. But thanks to a little pandemic, we had to skip a year as in-person events go. So we're very excited to be hosting our 10th anniversary. And if you check out the website, you'll notice that we've got lots of new stuff planned for there. So whether it's your first time or you've attended ODSC East many times, I would encourage you to check that out there. And we do have a first 100 ticket sale ending tomorrow, actually, or Friday rather. So go check that out if you have a chance. And then, as always, people ask us, where can we see this recording, get slides and everything else. A lot of that's hosted on our AI Plus training platform. Lots of free videos, courses. If you missed yesterday's session, I believe this session will also be there. We also have sessions from ODSC West, which we just hosted, our virtual sessions. So go check that out on our AI Plus training platform, and you can scan that QR code there or just go and Google it at AI Plus training, and it should come up. And sign up for free and check out some other great sessions, including the one we had yesterday on that. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce our guests for today. And in no particular order, because they're all fantastic, as you all know. Our first is Audrey Guidera, who is an AI platform specialist solution architect at Red Hat. And if you can say hello, Audrey, so we know what you want to. I know you got the name there, but.
Yeah, hello. It's great to see everybody.
And next up is Bob Kozdemba, who is a principal solution architect at Red Hat. Bob, if you can say hello.
Hey everyone, good to see you again.
And then we have Maria Khalusova, who is a staff developer advocate at Unstructured.io.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
And Maria, actually, I don't know if you remember, but we actually met in person at the Databricks Summit, I think it was.
Yeah, we have.
And I actually, one of my favorite hats I've been wearing at my when I go running and golfing is my Unstructured.io hat. I know they're a hot item. So
everybody loves our hats. They're fun, colorful, exciting.
Yeah, maybe next time we should add some virtual swag to this, because I know I've got some great Red Hat swag. Audrey, I know I still have the red Hat hat from, I think, ODSC East 2023.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we should include some virtual swag as well. And then we have Corey Lakowski, who was also an AI platform specialist solution architect at Red Hat. And with that, guys, yeah, Corey, say hello. Behind the scenes, very instrumental on yesterday's session as well. So with that, guys, I'll hand it over to the office hours.
Okay. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. What I'll do is I will just put up one of the slides that had our main agenda yesterday. That way, if you kind of missed what happened yesterday, you'll be able to go ahead and get an idea of what we were talking about. So just give me a moment here while I do that. Oops. Screen. Okay, so our whole emphasis for yesterday's workshop was that Red Hat had a customer that had a large amount of healthcare data. This is a healthcare provider in California. We're not talking gigabytes, we're talking petabytes worth of data. And one of the things that they were trying to accomplish was to get a lot of that data and be able to put it in some sort of form so that they could use it for future LLM usage. So they were looking at a chatbot. Here's the crutch of the problem, though, or some of them. One of them was that this data was on-prem, and they were thinking of actually transferring all of that data into the cloud. The second part was this data was not just one document format. They had PDFs, they had Word documents, they had HTML files, they had PowerPoints, they had handwritten stuff. As you can imagine, with a healthcare provider, they have all sorts of offices, doctors' offices that they work with. So nobody's really going to have the same structured format or document intake document or medical records that they're working with. So it was a really unusual situation to be in. They had a great idea. They had a lot of documents or data to work with. They just didn't know how to kind of access the data in the documents. So we came in and we said, well, we do have a partner, Unstructured IO, that is fantastic at structuring unstructured data. Why don't we take a look at some of your patient chart data and see if we can show you that this partner's software APIs and whatnot can work in conjunction with our own platform to help you be able to structure and organize your data. So the way that this workshop came about in another way is we did present a 5-minute demo earlier this year at a conference, and then we had some feedback, can you make this into a workshop? So what we decided to do is really focus on the data, because when we're working with a lot of people that are dealing with LLMs, one of the things that they continually bring up is how hard it is to get that data ready the first time around. So we said, okay, when we put this workshop together, we're going to focus a lot on the data because there seem to be a lot of questions around that. So we're going to use unstructured IO to kind of normalize and structure the data. Normalizing the data meaning if I have a chunk of data that is in a patient chart, I want to be able to compare that patient chart data that's in a PDF to maybe another patient chart data that is in a Word document. And unstructured IO helps us kind of normalize that. So we're comparing apples to apples instead of oranges to apples, so to speak. And then what we also want to do with that data is we want to go ahead and do some metadata extraction and chunking so that we can get specific parts of that data broken apart and then stored eventually in our Weave V8 database that we used for this particular workshop. I'm going to pause right there and see if there are any questions that people have from the audience. Okay, so what I'll do next then is I'm not going to go through this part again. This is something that we had in the workshop, but I'll just talk again, just to really re-emphasize working with those health industry documents. We had things, again, as we mentioned, PDFs. We had HTML forms or Word docs. We had PowerPoints that could have particular chart data or table data that we're interested in. We also have handwritten notes. Again, this one just being a prescription from a doctor. And then finally, when we start working with the unstructured IO component to start looking at the data, remember when we have unstructured IO, their APIs or ASD coming in, we basically take those documents, and what happens is that there's a series of algorithms that run in the background so that we break up the data in terms of kind of high-level text or bolded items in the document, which would be associated as a title. And then the rest of the text would be looked at as a narrative. So in this case, unstructured IO would pick out the things that are bolded and say, these are titles or sections of the document. Everything that is in the middle of the document that isn't bolded or highlighted or underlined, we're thinking this is narrative text. So what we're doing is we're setting up a basic tree structure or hierarchical tree structure of kind of a parent portion, which would be one section such as vaccine history, and then a child portion for elements that would get element IDs. And you would see this in your JSON file, such as under the vaccine history, then all of the bulleted parts would be child portions of that document. And this is really important because you want to get these relationships within these documents so that you can kind of store that in your Weaviate database so that later on, if you do make a query and say, I want to take a look at vaccines and see how many people had flu shots, you know, and hopefully you could get a count then of different charts that had flu shots. Okay. Bob or Maria, do you want to jump in with any comments?
Sure, I can add something to this approach of structuring the unstructured documents into individual elements like titles, narrative text. As you mentioned, it helps to find maybe parts of specific sections, but another use for this approach is that you get these logical units, and when you chunk the entire document into smaller chunks for retrieval, we have chunking strategies that are aware of the document structure. So you can make sure that you do not end up in a situation where you have a chunk that contains parts of different sections, because this will negatively affect retrieval performance of your application. Ideally, every chunk that you retrieve should be self-contained and ideally have information on a single topic. So you don't want to mix topics within the single chunk. And this is one of the reasons for splitting original documents into this logical units like title, narrative text, tables, and other types of elements. So there are multiple reasons to structuring a document this way. And it's not only to represent the structure, but the structure of the document is helpful in many ways. I see there's a question. Notice that in the demo, unstructured did miss some headings, which means that chunking grouped vitals under the social history. So I haven't looked at the demo and what it missed. I would say that, as with any machine learning models, when we have to employ either OCR or VLMs, there is a chance of this happening. So there's no way to guarantee that you will have 100% accuracy, but this is quite rare. So in this particular example, I think for this document, we could have used a different strategy. Normally, high resolution strategy, the strategy where we use OCR and document understanding models, is useful for documents with tables and images. Here we only have text. And in this case, we could have used a different strategy called FAST, which would likely extract all of those titles and tables better in this document. So in this case, I would just try a different strategy.
Okay, and it looks, and I'll just mention that the code that Bob and I worked on, this is a bad admission, but we haven't been keeping up to date in the last month with all of the great new, I would say, features that unstructured IO has added. The code that we wrote is just a few months old, so it is very possible that some of the things that you're seeing could be, again, as Maria suggested, been fixed by using different APIs or different strategies going forward. And let me see, there's another question. At what level or step do you account for variability within a document type? The title, narrative, or table format usually different among sources, although content might be consistently the same. Maria, I might put that back at you since you work with unstructured IO and you might be familiar with these types of questions from some of your customers.
So I'm not entirely sure what exactly this question means. Variability within a document type. There are different types of documents that unstructured support, and these include PDFs, Word documents, Markdown, HTML, and many more. So in total, it's going to be about 25 plus document types, but the document elements resulting from all the document types are going to be the same. The categories of the document elements are standardized across all the document types. So a table from a Word document is going to be a table in a PDF. It's going to be a table in a Markdown document. Okay, I think I see there's a follow-up to this question. For doctor's notes, they are not stereotyped unless from the same source. And we saw that hallucination for the first time when running the workshop. I'm not entirely sure what the question is. The table within any kind of document is going to be identified as a table. When extracting that table from any type of document, you get two things actually. So you get the text of the table in the text field of the JSON, and you should also get the table as HTML in the metadata. So that helps to preserve the structure of the structure of the table, the rows and columns in the similar way to how it is in the original document. And it doesn't really matter whether the table comes from a PDF or a Markdown file.
And I'm just taking a look to see if I can find where that example of a hallucination occurred.
Oh, I see there's more clarification to this question. So doctor's notes from different hospitals will have different format. Unstructured will preserve the format that they use. It's not going to standardize the format across different documents. So if tables are different in original documents, they're going to be different in the outputs because we do not impose any logic, any standardization logic into the outputs because this is very use case specific. We don't know how you want to standardize your data downstream. What we do is we extract the original data the way it is presented as accurately as we possibly can. And if different hospitals produce documents with different tables or different headers and charts and other elements, we will extract them as those elements. And then it's up to you to decide how you want to maybe reformat that information.
And I'm just trying to see if I can get the link to Xiao Yang. That's Amy. So I'm trying to post the link in. Amy, did you sign up yesterday for a username and password for the workshop. Just checking there because we only had so many slots available on our servers. And Anastasia, it says that ODSC, when I try to put in the link, fails to post to the open source data client. Let me do that without the HTTPS. See if that will work. So where I'm going to put stars, you'd have to put HTTPS : / Let's see if I can trick that. Nope. Okay. So let me see if I can add another chart. While I'm doing that, are there any other questions that we missed? Okay, so we had the hallucination, had the different format. Let's see any other questions. This might be a good time. I don't know, Bob, if you wanted to talk a little bit about Weaviate and how we used Weaviate in the workshop. That'll give me some time to see if I can get the link to Amy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can make some comments. So Weaviate is a vector database. The reason we need it is, in the end, we'd like to interact with a large language model in some application we might be writing. And large language models, as many of you may be aware, are trained on public-facing data that resides in the internet. They take a long time to train, and they access really huge amounts of data. So as a consequence, they are not always up to date with the latest and greatest information. So they're trained at a point in time. So that's one thing to consider. And then also in our scenario, they don't know about our private patient data that we're working with. So we need to think about how can we get the large language model to work with our private data. And there's a couple options to do so. We could take a large language model, bring it in-house, and we could fine tune it against our patient data. And provided we have the resources to do that, that's probably the most accurate solution, as long as your organization is okay with moving that data from from PDF form into a model form, and that might not be the ideal situation. So this notion of retrieval augmented generation is a nice trade-off between those two approaches, where we can use a vector database to store our private knowledge information, and that means we can search it with a natural language, and we can use it to drive the behavior of a large language model without actually retraining the model. So RAG represents sort of a trade-off between the two extremes that I mentioned. So that's kind of where it comes into play. And I guess I'll make those comments, and then I think everyone probably saw the demo yesterday, but I'll go ahead and just bring that up real quick if I can figure out how to share. Give me a second here. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention too is, before I do that, is that so the Weaviate vector database is hosted on OpenShift, and I did write a blog post about the benefits that can bring an organization, and I'll go ahead and post those in the chat here if anyone wants to take a look at see if it makes it. No, it said it failed to post, probably because of the URL format or something. Audrey, did you say? Let me take that out.
Yeah, I think that we're
Take the
not able to
HTTPS.
post. Yeah, I tried taking the HTTPS out. I think we're not able to post URLs in the
No, it still didn't let me do
chat
it.
here.
Well, maybe we can somehow get it to everyone, or you can just Google my name and Weaviate and OpenShift, and you'll find it. But it talks about why it makes sense to host a vector database on a platform like OpenShift. It brings a lot of advantages to enterprises when it comes to performance, scalability, resiliency, and security. So you can have a look at the blog post and read more about that. So let's see if I can present
Hey,
here.
yeah, Bob, can you send that blog post, the URL, in the private chat? Anastasia said that she's able to
Okay.
post those URLs.
Yeah, let's see.
So Anastasia, I just gave you the first link, which was for the OpenShift platform, where people would have been logging in with their username and password. That's in regards to Amy's question. Amy, you would have had to have a username and password. Just with that note, if you don't have one, let us know. We can most likely set one up for you, a new account. And to those who did the workshop will, the content and materials, access to the platform will still be available for another couple hours. So if you didn't finish up yesterday, feel free to keep continuing to work.
Let's see. I tried a screen share. Not sure it's showing up on the live screen though. There we go. So once you find the blog post, it's a short read. It'll go through sort of the basics we talked about yesterday, and then advantages of both of the platforms, a little bit on the use cases. And then at the very end, there's a GitHub repo if you want to have a look at an example I put together for the financial services industry. You can have a look at that. And then going back to what we showed yesterday, we'll just kind of focus on these two cells here. In the first cell, we are going to query the vector database. And you'll notice we can query this with a natural language. So we can type in a question, we can type in a word, a sentence fragment, and it will return items in the vector database that are similar to our query. And you can see that what it returns is essentially, the elements that we stored from the PDFs that were ingested. And many of these are sentence fragments, and there's no real structure to what we're seeing up there. And however, this is our private data, and if we want to leverage the power of a large language model to like summarize this information, or perhaps for a report or something, or maybe we want to summarize it for the patient, we can use a large language model to do so without going through the intensive process of fine tuning a large language model. So we can use a RAG approach to do that. So in this next cell, we're going to perform what's called a generative search, and this is a feature of the Weaviate SDK, where you can provide it a query in a natural language. And what the SDK will do is it'll take your query here, it'll reach out to the embeddings model that you have configured in our system, and the embeddings model is what will convert this string to a vector. And then once it's converted to a vector, now it can query the vector database for this text. And once it gets, so what should happen is we will get the answer that appears above here, the answer from the vector database, and then we're going to instruct the large language model, or we're going to prompt the large language model to summarize this text in 2 paragraphs as you would to a physician's assistant. And you can see that we get the 2 paragraphs here. We get complete sentences. It's formatted. It's a little cleaner, a little easier to read. And imagine this would be a task that a human might have to do, right? Is take these fragments of information and make them more consumable to the end user. So what we'll do is, just to have some fun here, is we'll change our prompt, and we'll say, summarize the text in 2 paragraphs as you would to the patient themselves. So we should get a slightly different answer. And you can see now it's written in the second person. So you have reported that you have quit using smokeless tobacco and so on. And you can see what the large language model has done for us is it's taken that same information that we see above here and it's put it in a different context. And that's really the power of the RAG approach here on how you can use a large language model to work with your private data and take advantage of the features that it provides for you. So I hope that helps. Any questions on the Weaviate or OpenShift side of things from the audience today?
There's a question whether these solutions are HIPAA compliant. I can answer to unstructured. Unstructured is HIPAA compliant, but I cannot answer for Weaviate. So that I would defer to you on this question.
Yeah, and I don't work for Weaviate, so I'll take that one off. And but I do have some context there that I can reach out to. Let's see. Let me go ahead and stop sharing here.
While we're waiting for that, Amy C, I was able to find your username and password from yesterday. So I just posted that in the chat. So don't worry again that everything is going to shut down. We are going to be keeping the server up and running. Actually, why don't we say that we'll keep it up and running until 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for those of you who want to do some more work. Please feel free.
I did also want to make a comment. Audrey mentioned that a lot of the work we did to prepare for this it's a few weeks old, which is a long time in this industry. So my notebook has a little bit of a workaround that is necessary to get through it. And what I've done is I've created a gist that can walk folks through that, and I'll just put it in the chat for Anastasia, and she can forward it on. But it is essentially what you have to do is go into OpenShift AI, shut down your workbench, and then choose a different notebook image and then restart your workbench and things will work for you. And I have a procedure written out there that folks can follow if they want to run through the notebook number 4 for the vector database. And there it is.
So when Bob mentioned about going into your workbench and shutting things off, hopefully you can see my screen there. That means when you go into your project and you're looking at your workbook image, you just go ahead and click this little check mark right there. You're going to stop the workbench. Remember, when we created that workbench in your initial project was a container. The workbench is just an entity within that container. And that workbench is responsible for setting up your ephemeral IDE, aka your Jupyter Lab environment. And there were a number of things that we could change in that. One of those being the image selection. So if the image selection, say, was like TensorFlow, but you really needed standard data science, you would just go in and click standard data science. Now, what is this image data science? Well, as we were mentioning yesterday, a lot of the comments that we had from our customers were, is there a way that we can bundle a lot of the common languages that we use or the packages and libraries that we use as data scientists in our company? And our solution was, we're going to create a bunch of these standard, how you would say it, images or packages or libraries that would be loaded into your container or into your Jupyter notebook, so you wouldn't have to do a lot of pip installs. So we had things like Minimal Python, which really only had Jupyter Lab and a notebook, or we had things like TensorFlow, where it would have a lot of TensorFlow packages, all the way to PyODBC, PyMango, and SciPy. Again, if you were working with something like CUDA, then you could see the CUDA information there, again, such as Jupyter Lab or the notebook. So again, that's just our way of helping reusability and reliability when you have a lot of people in a group. That way you can quickly give somebody in the group that's new access to a workbench and say, hey, just load up this image and you can start fixing some of the code that you've been assigned to or write something new using the same standards that we have. That's kind of a long about way to do that. The other thing that we really didn't go into is then you have the ability to also use GPUs. If you've set up GPUs on your hyperscaler or on-prem, then you could pull in a GPU for usage if you had, say, a large model that you need to train with a lot of data. And this is where, under the environment variables, again, in this image, where you would add your unstructured API key or unstructured URL key. There's nothing preventing you from going into your notebook and at the very top of your notebook somewhere, actually putting in unstructured API key equals this and putting in the key and saying unstructured API URL equals this, but it's a practice that we don't recommend. And sorry, haven't started up my notebook yet, so things are kind of crashing there. Yeah, so those are just things. And when you update the workbench, what it does is it takes those changes, it goes ahead and recombines them, and then what we can do is restart that workbook image and then get into the new environment, and it should have all the changes. If we had added GPUs, we'd have access to GPUs. If we used a new notebook image such as standard data science, we'd have all of those standard data science packages and libraries available. Okay, so that's restarting right now. Are there any particular questions on, say, some of the other bits of code that we looked at or had within the workshop?
I see there's a question about privacy and how long does it take to de-identify or anonymize the documents. I think this person is asking about removing personally identifiable information. And I just shared in the private chat a link to an example notebook that illustrates how you can remove this kind of information from the documents with unstructured. It's not enabled as a functionality by default because there are different use cases. Unstructured is used for healthcare and for finances and for manufacturing and for many different industries. But there's a way to remove this kind of information from the documents once they have been partitioned. And there's an example in the chat right now.
Yeah, and I was also going to mention unstructured I/O. Just in the last couple of months, I've added some really beautiful examples on different things that you can do when you're kind of unstructuring or getting data ready. And one of those is batch processing. So they've added some examples on how you can do batch processing, which I actually found really exciting. I'm going to actually try that out with a large number of documents and see if I can break it. Just kidding, Maria. So definitely hit the unstructured I/O site as well too, and just take a look at the different examples that they have there. Okay, and Sari, you said you were trying to use the login today, but had some trouble with your login. Instead of the normal screen that you just showed with the data science project, I'm getting a different layout. It could depend where you are. So let me share my screen and I will log out and then I will log back in so that we can see what you're experiencing. So let me log out and I'm gonna just dismiss that. and get out of that. And okay, let me log out here. Initially, when we get you to log into the system, what is happening is you're logging into our OpenShift platform itself. So when you log in as a workshop user, let me go with user 0, you're going to be logging into the OpenShift platform. Let me see if it'll take it directly to there for me. Yeah, so you'll be seeing the underlying platform. And what you'll do is you'll end up going to this grid icon here because you want to go to the actual dashboard that has the OpenShift AI information. So again, I log back in as user 0. I am in the Red Hat OpenShift platform, which is great, but I want to go to the dashboard that sits on top of it. So I'm going to go to this grid icon, and then I'm going to hit Red Hat OpenShift AI. It's going to ask me to log in again. We'll go to OpenShift AI dashboard so that when you come into this, you're going to see that dashboard for Red Hat OpenShift AI. And then from there, you're going to be, we pre-loaded a project and a workbench so that you didn't have to create one yourself if you didn't want to. So then we would hit the structuring unstructured data for healthcare project. And we'd look at workbenches here. And then you would be able to look at your workbench. So that's the screen that I was on there. Hopefully that helps. There were instructions that we gave out. What I'll do is I'll take a copy of those instructions, and in the back, very back, they have resources. So there's a link to the slide deck that we're showing bits and pieces of. I'm going to put the link into the OpenShift cluster used for yesterday's workshop, but let me get the actual instructions for that and see if Anastasia can go ahead and add that into the chat. So I'm going to put that right there. Okay, I am just going to back up a little bit just to re-emphasize where we were within this OpenShift platform and then this OpenShift AI console. You remember yesterday we said that to go ahead and work with different parts in the model development lifecycle, could be an algorithm as well. We wanted to show you where everything would sit on a hyperscaler and build up how we were layering our applications. So what you logged into off the first bat there, Sari, was you logged into this Red Hat OpenShift portion here. So on top of AWS, we layered our OpenShift platform, which is an enterprise Kubernetes version. And then when we went further up, we went and then added that Red Hat OpenShift AI dashboard that you were trying to get into. We go further up the stack. This is how we layer different partners that we work with. You'll see that we eventually then were able to use unstructured and Weaviate because these were parts that were added to our platform. So what this looks like again, when we're looking at this from OpenShift, is we logged into that OpenShift platform. So that's that part that sits on AWS. And then on top of that OpenShift platform, we jumped into our OpenShift AI dashboard, which gives you this ability to create projects, create workbenches. We didn't go into this portion, but you could create data science pipelines. You could go ahead and add model servers for multimodal or single mode model distribution. You could do things with cluster storage, data connections, and permissions. We didn't go into all of those things for this workshop because we just were very interested, again, on working with this data preparation portion of the actual, I would say, products that are available for the OpenShift platform. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Okay, Bob, you got that question there. Okay.
Yeah, that fix, Sean, that fix is just for notebook 4. I believe for your notebooks, Audrey, it's the data science notebook should work
Yeah, let's take a
because you're
look
using the
here.
newer version of the SDK, I believe.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is we were a little bit caught off guard because the SDK changed. So we had all of this code that we had written previously for the older SDK of unstructured IO. And then we quickly tried to update our stuff for the newer version of the SDK when we found that it was available. And we didn't quite make all of the cutoffs. So you're going to find a merge in our notebooks of the older SDK and the newer SDK, which means some of the functions may be a bit different. Some of the classes may be named a little bit differently. Our apologies on that. But this is a good reminder how quickly everything changes in this industry. It's you turn around and things change overnight.
And good news, in about a month, we will be releasing a UI-based product where you won't need to do any coding. You can just configure your pipelines with UI. And this is not going to be an issue anymore.
All right. I'm not seeing any more questions. There was a question on, I think, Notebook 3, pre-processing PDFs. In all honesty, don't go to this one. This was something that we were just using for testing beforehand. And yes, Sean, 1 and 2 are using the newer version, and then 3 and 4 with the older version. That is correct. So if you go again to the newer version, when you look into how you're setting up your client, it's going to look a lot different than if you went to, say, the pre-processing, which we were using the older version of the SDK. You're going to see some of the things where we use things a bit differently. And then if you looked into Bob's code again, you're going to see some of the older SDK being used there. Yeah, just number 4. Number 3, I started to change really quickly before this workshop today, just in case somebody like, oh, I don't know, Sean decided to go ahead and try that workbook out or notebook out.
Something to add here is that SDK is great for experimenting with the library to see what kinds of outputs you get, to send a doc or two and get a feel for the transformations that you're getting. But in most production use cases with the API, we recommend using our ingest library, which uses SDK under the hood. But what it does is that it allows you to build a pipeline from a source to a destination with the transformations in between. So you can ingest however many documents you have from an S3 bucket or Azure Blob Storage or a local directory or any of the other supported sources, do the same transformations, and then load structured data with the same pipeline into Weaviate or Pinecone or MongoDB or any of the destinations that we support. It is using the same SDK under the hood, but it just makes it a bit easier when you have more than one document. And when you have different sources to connect to, different destinations you want to upload your data into, this is the recommended way for batch processing.
Yeah, so what we're doing to Sean's question is we are taking these materials and we're beginning to go through them in one more rendition. With the responses that we had from you, we're very encouraged by that. So we submitted this particular workshop to be delivered next year at our Red Hat Summit. A lot of the changes that would happen in that workshop would be the addition of the platform that Maria was talking about. We would definitely go into batch processing because we would have more time. Red Hat Summit occurs in May in Boston. So I don't know if any of you are in the Boston area. We may go ahead and even do another rendition of this workshop with those updated changes in another venue or in ODSC if ODSC is looking for more material in the new year. Yeah, so the environment variables, they would have not been pre-populated in your workbench. You would have to pre-populate those. So what you would be doing to get the API key and the URL is you would have to submit a request to unstructured IO. There's a link in the workshop instructions where you can ask for a free API key. And then what you would do is once you have that free API key, I'd have to close this again. You would then go in and just add those key value pairs here in the workbench. That way we weren't using one key for the entire workshop, trying to be fair to unstructured IO in that regard. Okay. So I will just talk a little bit about another use case that I know where unstructured IO is helping the government of New Zealand. They are looking at one of their centers where unemployment, young students, people, retirement. It's not exactly a social security office, but something very similar, where they have numerous documents that span from a number of years that people have to fill out in order to get benefits. And it is really difficult with all these changes over these years for those documents, because if you miss something, you may not get the funding for education or funding for some benefits that you need. So I know that we have a few of our partner staff or colleagues in Australia and New Zealand that are working with that New Zealand office. And then some unstructured IO folks working again with that New Zealand office to see if they can pull all of these different forms together so that they can get a better idea of, you know, which forms have which entities that need to be filled out so that they're not missing anything. I don't have any other update other than that, but that was, I thought, a very interesting use case that could use unstructured IO. When I think there was one more use case that somebody was working on, and they had internally a lot of documents on an old Microsoft platform, and they were hoping to just get a good summary of those documents so that they could create a chat bot to answer questions internally about some of the company's procedures and whatnot. So they were going to use unstructured to gather all that information up so that they could create an internal chatbot that would answer questions about various procedures that needed to be done within the company when you're working on a project. Okay, and let me just check if I did send that document. Yes, I did send the document or the workshop instructions, so you'll have those there. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we can think of a lot of stuff to come up with, but this is your opportunity to ask us questions. And you don't need to be shy, just put it on out there. All right. Well, Maria, I would ask you, the new platform that Unstructured IO is delivering. Do you have any screenshots of that or even have access to that, or can you even show it right now?
I don't think I can show it right now, but we already have some docs published, so you can kind of get a sneak peek unofficially of what's happening there. If you go to our docs, I shared a few links to the documentation, and if you navigate to the platform tab, you'll be able to see and learn a little bit about the platform. There will be some new partitioning strategies available in the platform, some options for scheduling workflows, and some other exciting things.
It's really awesome. I'll be checking out that new doc as well. So be prepared for questions from me. Coincidentally, if our abstract gets accepted at Red Hat Summit, again, the three of us would be producing or delivering this workshop. We have another question. How would you add verification to these procedures? Let's see. Can you be more specific on the verifications? What exactly do you mean? If you don't mind typing out some more context. And while more context is being added, I'm just going to ask again that if you took the workshop yesterday or worked along with us or had an opportunity to dive into it today, Anastasia is going to be sending out a survey. So we honestly do want your feedback. We'd love to have your feedback in terms of how relevant the material was to what you're doing right now. Did you find it interesting? How easy or not easy did you find working through the workshop? All of those things help us to become better presenters and as well really tailor our work so that it's better for a virtual audience. Because as you can imagine, virtual workshops are a little bit difficult to put on. I think a lot of us have been successful with that, but any comments, suggestions are greatly greatly appreciated. So evaluation of output. Is extraction complete? Is data accurate? Maria, you can take that one, or I can take that one, or even Bob can take that one. Who's up for it?
So there are multiple ways of evaluating your system on different levels. So when you are building your RAG application, you want to understand whether the retrieval was accurate, whether you retrieved the pieces of information that you actually wanted to retrieve, and there are metrics for that. There's mean reciprocal rank. There's NCDG at K. Different metrics to evaluate the retrieval precision. You have recall. There as a metric. You have evaluation of the usefulness of your responses. That kind of depends on the. It kind of depends on your system and what human expert would expect of the system. The best way to evaluate here would be kind of mimicking the human expert judgment of what is the valuable output and what is not. And as for the human in the loop example, that's a very valuable way of evaluating these systems. It is also a very expensive way to evaluate the system. So you would have to figure out the balance of adding a human in the loop. When do you want to do it? How often do you want to do it? Whether you can guide maybe LLM as a judge based on the experiences of the human in the loop. There are multiple ways to evaluate these systems. It is a rather hot topic in the community. There is no one size fits all approach. A lot depends on the use case and what the users expect of the system, and the best way to start probably is with understanding what are the expectation and what matters in each particular use case, and then go from there.
Hopefully that answered your question. I'll just reiterate one point. It's always extremely invaluable to um, have an expert that can kind of do a sanity check at the end to take a look at some of the data. Sometimes it's not possible for one person, obviously, to go through everything. So having a sanity check is great. And of course, with all of the tools that Maria mentioned, you can get a better handle on your data to see, if it really is valid or in some sense is going to be useful for the use case that you have in mind at the end of the day.
I see that our time is running up a little bit.
I saw that we're getting close to the end. I would mention that, if you have questions, please reach out. Anastasia, is it okay if we put our email addresses in the chat?
Sure.
We're more than happy to answer any questions, because we know at the end of the day, sometimes when you have a session like this and you're thinking about stuff later on or even the next day, there may be more questions. So, please reach out. Of course, mine has failed to post, so I'm going to ask Anastasia if you could put my email address in the chat. Looks like Bob was successful.
I got lucky.
You got lucky.
Oh, no.
Yeah, for sure. And again, to reiterate, we will keep the servers up until late this afternoon on Pacific Standard Time. So again, I think I said 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll have everything up. Feel free to ask questions. You're going to have the recordings and everything that you can rewatch. Bring some popcorn and rewatch the recordings with a bunch of your fellow nerds. A great way to do stuff.
Thank you so
Don't
much.
forget to fill out the surveys. Yeah.
Yes, we will send another email today with the link with the survey. So please, it's a short survey, so it just takes a few seconds. So please fill it out. Oh, I see a few comments still coming. Oh,
Would two chunks coming from the PDF and PowerPoint with similar content get embeddings next to each other? That's a good question.
So if the content is similar, then it doesn't matter where it's coming from. And if the content is similar and you use the same embedding models on them, then yes, they should be similar to each other in the vector space.
okay. So we shared emails like Audrey, Bob's, and Maria's emails in the chat. So if you have any questions, please leave them out there. We also will send another email today with the recording of office hours and the training that happened yesterday, with the link to the slides and GitHub links and instructions. So if you have, the all information should be there. If you have any questions, please reach out to info@odsc.com and we will answer all your questions in the email. Thank you, Aaron, for joining, and thank you, Audrey, Bob, and Maria, for this nice office hour session and answering all the questions in the chat. And hopefully all the questions were answered.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.